Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a Simply Nailogical podcast.
Hello.
Today, we're going to be watching an entire episode of MasterChef while providing minimal commentary and then getting really upset when people don't like that we're doing that.
Okay. Or we could watch Menchie sleep. How about that? Look at that, copyright free.
Yeah, instead of the Fireplace channel, we have Menchie up on the screen here.
Sleeping,
She's
yeah.
live streaming. She's working hard. She was earning...
You are lucky
paying
if you
rent.
catch a Menchie live stream. I mean, well, she streams more than me, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, you got to pick up the slack here.
Yeah, but her lives aren't available as VODs, because other cats might get jealous, so they might claim it just out of anger, jealousy.
Yeah, but just, original content from Menchie up on YouTube. Link is below. No, so we wanted to talk today about, I guess, fair use, but more, well, really just what isn't fair use. And there's a trend going on right now, mostly on Twitch, or I guess we're talking about Twitch, where people have just been watching entire episodes of television shows or entire movies, and sometimes they're providing commentary, sometimes they're not, but it's sort of opened up this discussion about like what fair use is or obviously isn't, and if this is a good thing for the platform or not. So like, I guess the concrete examples are what, like, I know you watch Twitch more than me, so maybe you can fill in some gaps for me, but like there's two things that I think have sort of broken through to people talking about this outside of just like the Twitch universe. People, a bunch of really big Twitch streamers have just been watching entire episodes of MasterChef, which is like a Fox show, Gordon Ramsay, I think amateur chefs competing. It's a Gordon Ramsay show. All his shows are kind of the same, right?
It's become like a trend that some top streamers on Twitch will watch that with their audience. But that's not the only thing that people are watching. People have watched like really big movies. People have watched some anime series that are by like large anime companies. It's not like it's some obscure thing. So there's a lot of that's been going on. And I think some of this has been going on for, forever. Just like I'm sure on YouTube, there's tons of copyrighted content by, big companies that's just escaping content ID violations and whatever. But I guess it's become more known to the mainstream, to the normies, to us people who aren't necessarily like watching Twitch and in on that culture every day, because we're seeing it in the news. I'm seeing it in Twitter headlines. Pokimane, who is the largest female streamer on Twitch and is kind of like the face of Twitch in some ways, like they use her face on a lot of their marketing, was recently banned. But in their universe, a ban just means a temporary suspension. So I believe it's 48 hours. She is not allowed to stream live from her Twitch channel. And that is they never tell you actually why you get a ban, but it's it's assumed that it's because she was streaming Avatar the last I don't remember what it's called. It's a cartoon that was based on Avatar. I actually don't know the content, but Nickelodeon, it appears, had given her a DMCA.
She sort of implied in a tweet that was the reason, but you're right, Twitch doesn't like to give the reason, and that's partially a liability thing for them. They prefer not to be too specific. But
that's why more people outside of the Twitch universe, I think, have been hearing about this, because like the biggest well-known streamer on Twitch was, quote, banned for this.
So like Pokimane and then Hassan, who you watch and you were on a stream once, like he got a DMCA strike, I think, for streaming MasterChef or just watching entire episodes of MasterChef too. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, maybe this is a bit of a crackdown going on right now. But I think you're exactly right that the difference isn't forever. People who know what they're doing have been able to find pirated content on different streaming platforms, including Twitch, right? Yeah. Like I think you can filter by like Russian channels. You'll find some Russian channel with like 5 viewers and it's just like playing some mainstream movie, right?
Yeah.
And like some Twitch admin will find that and take it down over time. But it's like, it's really hard for any of these platforms to really monitor and completely erase that from the platform, right? But it's a completely different thing to see people at the top of the Twitch leaderboards, people with like 50,000 concurrent viewers, just taking a nap while they're playing Lord of the Rings for their audience. And I think I mostly wanted to talk about this today because I think this is a terrible thing for the platform, not just because it's super lazy content on the part of these people. It's basically shitting all over the platform these people have made millions of dollars off of and making it worse for the people behind them that could potentially have like incredibly detrimental effects on the platform as a whole and smaller creators trying to be successful.
Yeah, and us coming from the YouTube landscape, we, I think, have a really good understanding of like what we think is right to do as content creators in order to transform, and how parodies are okay, but you got to like add a lot of context and change. And one thing I just want to point out though is like to make a YouTube video, like a traditional YouTube edit where you are taking someone else's content to transform it, to parody it, you get the opportunity because you're editing it to cut it up, to change it, to do things to it. Like when I make a Troom Hacks video, like I'm cutting up their content. I'm spending hours on truly making it transformative. The definition of like live streaming something and reacting to it almost makes it impossible. Like I don't want to say impossible, but it makes it far more difficult just by definition of being live to really transform something to that degree. So there is kind of that like platform difference that you just have to acknowledge is going to vary, because the type of creating you're doing as a content creator, as a live streamer versus a traditional YouTuber who makes edited content is just different.
Yeah, so let's touch on the fair use thing briefly.
What is
Mostly
fair
just
use?
to establish that what the TV meta, the reacting to TV show trend, I think is just self-evidently not fair use in the majority of cases, at least.
We should explain
But
like
we
why
should
though.
talk a little bit about what fair use
Yeah.
means, right? Like, so you are allowed to react to content owned by other people or copyrighted content as long as you follow certain principles of fair use. And this varies by country. This is codified in laws, right? So some of the core principles you'll hear about are like, is how you are incorporating that content or reacting to that content like transformative in nature. That's a huge one. That's usually like the first thing people talk about. But there's also principles like, or an element of it is that content educational? Are you incorporating in your content for profit or not? And is the way you are using that content a substitute for someone else going to that content and
away
watching?
from-
Are you taking
yeah.
away from someone else needing to go to that content originally? And I really think just like on those four core points, this reacting to entire episodes of MasterChef, it's not transformative, it's not really educational. You are a substitute for someone needing to go to the Fox channel and watching that itself. Like, I don't think by any reasonable interpretation, this particular trend is fair use. You'd really have to make the argument that someone is adding so much commentary to it. But then again, that it's still a substitute for having to go watch it itself because you're showing an entire episode live, right? So I don't really think there's much of a conversation to be had here around
think
this specifically being
From
fair
a
use.
legal perspective, if you read the 4 factors of fair use, yes, it would be incredibly hard to argue that streamers watching entire episodes or movies with their chat and pausing occasionally to comment constitutes fair use. However, I do want to just like, I like to listen to the arguments from both sides to understand how people see it. And I think on the streamer side, a lot of the big streamer argument is that it's not necessarily detracting from the viewership of the original content if they're actually bringing more eyes that would have never otherwise gone to watch MasterChef because they don't give a shit. I'm not saying this should evade them from the law, but it is something from that side of the argument that I think should be considered. So what are your thoughts if like they're bringing 40,000 viewers watching MasterChef, if you were to survey all those people, maybe 20 of them would say, yes, I would have watched that on my own.
Yeah, but that person has 40,000 viewers sending them donations and becoming members on their channel.
So it's a revenue issue. is
While
what you're
they
saying.
are rebroadcasting content. Like, I just think it's a weak like I guess the argument you hear sometimes, and I think what you're saying is that Hassan or XQC might just say, you know, I have 50,000 people watching this content they wouldn't have otherwise watched. I'm not taking away from like the revenue of that other channel. Or at times I've even heard them sort of some people make the argument that like their exposure is like good for those other people. And maybe that could be the case with like some smaller creators. If the biggest streamer in the world is watching your little YouTube video channel with only 1,000 subscribers, there's probably a net positive benefit from that person ripping your content. But at the end of the day, it is totally the prerogative of the person who owns that content, whether they're okay with someone else using it or not,
Yeah,
right?
and it's up to the copyright owner to enforce it because the onus is on them to enforce it, which is kind of like backwards, but that's just how it works.
I think people have a very different perspective on this because we're talking about giant media conglomerates and like channels like Fox. But if we were talking about like small
Like
independent creators
artists,
and artists,
people would riot.
if
Yeah.
someone was saying like, if Hassan came out and said, well, I'm just paying you an exposure, I'm going to use all your content and I'm just paying you an exposure. If that artist didn't appreciate that or agree with that, we would think that big streamer is a piece of shit for just stealing that person's content and saying, I'm paying you an exposure. You see this all the time on like,
Well, I think they just stopped doing it. If someone says, "Hey, can you not do that?" They would just be like, "Okay, well."
I think reasonable people would. But I just think the idea of paying someone an exposure, I think is just gross kind of in
Well, especially
most
if that
cases.
wasn't agreed upon. Like that is the problem is that there was no arrangement or agreement. They're asking for permission later.
Yeah. We have seen some channels or some media companies sort of realize though there is some benefit in
Benefit,
having
yeah.
big streamers react to their content. So like I don't see this completely black and white. Like I think HGTV is a funny example of this. I don't know if they've like come up with like an official statement or anything like that, but they've been interacting with some streamers that seems to be like endorsing the idea of letting streamers react to their content, right? And I guess HGTV, the Home and Garden television channel, probably got like a much older demographic watching their content on traditional television. So if some hip 25-year-old streamer with a bunch of people in a key demo they're trying to reach wants to watch some home and
Yeah.
garden renovation show, I think they're okay with it. And I think they're banking on the fact that at least some of those people might be converted into wanting to
Well,
watch that
what
content.
happens that I've observed is on Twitter trends, you'll see like a show trending, and the MasterChef stuff has been trending, I think, a lot because a lot of big streamers have been watching it. Like that's just like, and then they make memes out of it, and it comes from that community. So would MasterChef have trended in the way it has in the last few
See,
weeks?
that's where I
And
like-
I know it's hard to say. I'm not trying to say like it's only
MasterChef
because of
doesn't
them.
need XQC and Hassan
No.
to watch it for them to be successful.
That's not what I meant. I just
Right.
meant it's a different demo. It might have a benefit, and that might be a benefit to MasterChef, but it's not a benefit that MasterChef asked for or gave permission
And
for.
it's entirely at the
Yeah.
discretion of the content owner if they're willing to accept that benefit. Like there's a broad consensus in the gaming industry. I would say there's some gray area or some nuance to like how transformative or fair use just gameplay is, right? But it is the case that, game publishers could just be claiming content of people playing games on Twitch and YouTube. And broadly, they don't because they realize it's in their benefit.
But they also built somewhat of a tool. It's on Twitch and YouTube where you can select which game you're playing that just shows at the bottom, or it says the category on Twitch. So I think that also serves to give some promo to the people watching to say, oh, that's what the streamer is watching. I can click and find the official game. So then maybe they convert into purchasing it themselves.
Sure. And Nintendo is a useful example here because for a long time they didn't let people stream Nintendo gameplay on these platforms. I think around 2018 they came out with like their policy on how they were okay with people streaming their content, and they
Well,
have
they
like
realized there was a benefit.
they
to-
realized there was
yeah.
a benefit, but they said, hey, here's our rules. It's entirely at our discretion whether or not we're comfortable with this content being demonetized or not. It can't include unofficial stuff. Like they have like a policy on it, right? And the policy is written in a way that gives them complete discretion as to what they're okay with, basically.
But
to
in
me-
practice, they've allowed people to play the games.
Yeah,
like
because they've realized
yeah.
in their benefit. But I think it's totally fair that as the owner of that content, and here's the thing
could,
with gameplay too, like just by playing a game, you are transforming. Like it isn't a passive thing like watching a movie. Playing a game you playing the game is transforming what the audience is viewing kind of by definition. So I don't even think it's actually really a fair analogy to say it's comparable to just sitting there and watching an episode of television anyway.
It's not exactly the same. I agree with you because there can be a different outcome in the game based on your reactive decisions. There can't be a different outcome of the movie based on you reacting.
It's much easier to argue it's transformational. Is my
But
point.
you may, as a streamer or a watcher, think that stuff that you think is transformative just by nature of pausing to talk and discuss. Like, I know that's their argument, but, you know, we've already discussed the principles of fair use. I don't really think it stands up. Do we want to talk a bit about why, like, what is DMCA and why is it a thing?
Yeah,
to
and
make
just
that
and
clear.
why this trend's bad for Twitch, honestly. So yeah, people talk about DMCA strikes. So
What does that stand for? Digital Millennium Copyright
yeah, it's
something?
Act.
Act.
It passed. It's a law from like 1998 that is still used to sort of govern this. I think a lot of people think maybe it's just a little anachronistic at this point or a little old. It was written like when the internet was pretty new in terms of how it was used by the masses. But essentially, so here's some backstory. YouTube was sued back in 2007 or 2008 by Viacom because they were arguing that YouTube was allowing people to just rip and upload like Viacom owned content, like clips from Comedy Central, I think. And Viacom sued YouTube for $1 billion. And it went to court. And YouTube's argument was under the DMCA, that act, we have safe harbor protection, meaning, you know, as a host of content or like as any ISP would have, we are protected from not being liable for the things people are uploading to our platform. It's not us uploading it, right? So you should really be going after the people uploading it. But under the DMCA, YouTube or any hosting platform has a responsibility. They have a requirement to have two things. They need a system by which content owners can claim things and say it is their property. And two, YouTube or any other platform needs to have a system in place to ban people who repeatedly infringe on this by uploading other people's owned content.
So as a result of that Viacom lawsuit, YouTube built their version of a copyright content ID system.
Yeah, so a lot of the sort of, the content ID system on YouTube now that allows people, a lot of it is based in the requirements of the DMCA, and I think was just reinforced by this lawsuit that YouTube ultimately, there was a judgment in YouTube's favor, but then it was appealed, and then there was sort of some gray area there, and eventually they settled, right? So I actually don't really know what the outcome was, and I don't know if anyone outside of the room does.
Ended up being a little bit more in YouTube's favor, but I can't recall the exact details.
Yeah. Okay. You can fact check us. It wasn't a black and white case, and YouTube did come out of it clearly with a responsibility not to just let people just re-upload
Yeah,
content.
they basically had no choice but to build
They need to
some
have
tool.
effective tools.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying those tools now are perfect. We can talk about
They're
all the
not.
ways in which they're flawed and can be abused, and they are. And you have personally
On both
experienced
sides.
this, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's more interesting. So you have some insight on that side, but you also have some insight on, as a creator in the not the partner program, but
As a copyright holder.
Yeah.
Right.
So what does it look like on your end?
Okay, so let me just step back a second. So you've all heard content creators complain about getting copyright strikes, right?
Yeah.
So I get them. I just got one on the second Life is Strange stream I just did.
Yes,
And that's because I didn't have streamer mode on intentionally and there was some music playing in the background. I tried to sing over on the like 20 seconds it was playing, but didn't work. So my whole stream is now claimed 100% of the revenue goes to the claimant.
Yeah.
That decision is at the discretion of the copyright holder. So if I put myself in the copyright holder seat, I, as a partnered YouTube content creator, have access to my own content ID. So I can log into my back end of the system, and YouTube does this thing where they calculate what percent of another video matches your content. So if you organize by percent match, I've done this to, I just look at what's 100%, because 100% always means it's a complete rip of your content. There's nothing audio or visual that is different than your content. That's pretty clear to me. Like, that's just a rip. And that is something I can select, and it gives me the choice. I can share in revenue. I can take all the revenue. I can strike it and ask YouTube to remove it, or I can block it in territories that aren't mine, I think is how that works. So I have that choice. If it's 100% match, to me, that's just a rip. And in the past, I've just said, like, just take it down, take it down, take it down. Because that's not me. It's like, there's a lot of channels who tried to rip nail art tutorials. That's a thing I've talked about before, especially ripping like Instagram stuff. And then there's the option of, and then after the 100%, I see things like 80%, 70% match. And I've clicked in to see, like, what is this? And sometimes it's fan edits or clips of other nail artists, like, trying to follow my tutorial back when that was a trend, like following Simply Nailogical's tutorial. And I'm not going to do anything to that. I, as the content ID holder, decide I'm not going to strike it. I'm not going to take, I don't even want half their revenue. I'm not going to do anything because I appreciate that content. That is community-based content. To me, that's my decision. I don't want to hurt these people, and I like that content. It has a benefit to me. That's how I personally feel, and I feel like they are adding value. But then there's other like 80% matches that are clearly just rips from channels who make compilations of big YouTuber content, especially all my nail tutorials. So that's something that I might just strike down. And I have always chosen to just have something removed as opposed to taking someone's revenue, because I just feel like on principle, if I want my content to exist, it's going to be on my channel, and I don't want to just like use this third party to get more revenue. I don't know. It's just weird and messy to me. So I'm just like, just take it down if it shouldn't be there at all.
Well, it's an interesting choice, because I think what's sort of brilliant about YouTube's system is that it allows claimants not to just have to say, take it down. It allows them to claim the revenue.
This is good, but I want half of it if they want. I mean,
yeah,
whatever.
or all of it in some cases.
Which is weird.
That's partly an issue, right? But I think YouTube has sort of publicized at times how much they pay out content owners who have claimed their stuff through I think it was like $5 billion last year.
Because it is crazy. I streamed a gameplay for 3 or 4 hours. And 20 seconds of it, because the claimant has to write which portion of the video they're claiming. 20 seconds of it was copyrighted. But they opted, at their discretion, to collect all the revenue.
From the whole 4-hour
from the
stream.
whole 4-hour stream.
So I'm not saying that's a good thing at all, but I think this is actually the closest we have of any of the platforms coming to some sort of solution here, is something along these revenue sharing lines. Because if we don't just want all that, if we don't want your 4-hour stream to just be removed from YouTube, that would suck, right? Yeah. I think there should be some reasonable way of facilitating revenue sharing when you have included something that is clearly owned by someone else and that they could substantiate that. I think revenue sharing is totally reasonable. And like YouTube has like very specific guidance on things like people can upload cover songs to YouTube, and maybe it's not of any song, it's kind of up to the music publisher. But there's clearly like a sort of precedent for being able to upload a cover with the expectation that you are just going to have a profit share with the music publisher, and then you get the other half of it. Yeah,
I don't know if that always happens, though.
There's Google help. There are forums, there are help pages that explain how you can do this, how you can check if it's eligible for revenue sharing, I think, before you even upload it. So like YouTube has at least, I think, dipped their toe into the water of like what some solutions here are for revenue sharing. I'm not saying content ID is perfect, but I think like your example of being on the other side of it is like really helpful and understand as a content owner, because think of how reasonable it sounded when you were talking about it right now.
But I'm reasonable as a content ID copyright owner because I am also a creator.
Yeah, and
I think that it allows me to understand the value and the perspective.
So when these tools are used in good faith, I actually think they're really effective. To get back to the Twitch thing, I think the problem here is that these people are obviously using other people's content not in fair use. And I think there's an attitude among big Twitch streamers that it's just like, oh, whatever, I'll get a DMCA strike and
there's not much consequence.
Maybe I'll be suspended for a day or two. But the consequence isn't just that. First of all, these people who own MasterChef or Naruto or any of these shows, they don't have to go through the DMCA strike process that Twitch has or YouTube has. They could just sue you. And it couldn't just be like a civil liability thing. They could just sue you, for damages. But there also is criminal liability here, fines or even imprisonment for pirating content. Like, the law is pretty serious about this, and it's not like we've seen that, but I wouldn't be shocked if we saw in some of these very egregious cases if someone was just sort of made an example of. And I think these people are rebroadcasting content without license, obviously identifying who they are in such an egregious way that I'm kind of shocked we haven't seen an example yet of someone just getting sued or criminally fined for it, right?
Well, maybe they're just building a case. I was watching a
Yeah.
video by Devin Nash. He's like been streaming on Twitch for like 12 years and has a lot of knowledge about this industry. But he was explaining that that might, in all likelihood, be why nothing has happened yet. Because the lawyers for Viacom, or not Viacom, but whatever, the Nickelodeon or whoever is doing that, because instead of just giving DMCA strikes, you want to let the repeat offender keep doing it so you can document it and you can list that there's not 2 times, there's 100 times. Here's the exhibits.
Yeah, and in that case, I think the content owner is entitled to like some calculation of damages based on how much that streamer made from rebroadcasting that content,
And
which
that's so okay. So another difference though between YouTube, like if someone claims my video on YouTube and they take all the ad revenue, the vast majority, well, now I stream on YouTube too, so it's like a little more tricky, but like in a traditional YouTuber sense, that's all your money from that video. They just take everything. You don't have money in any other way from that video if someone has claimed that video. But on Twitch, what are, like, hypothetically, what would they be claiming? The revenue from donations? Because subscribers isn't like just about that stream.
I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say any different revenue stream they had from that broadcast is money they made from broadcasting content they didn't have the rights to broadcast, whether that's memberships, donations.
I
or
feel
whatever.
like that's grayer because with the ad revenue argument, it was only ad revenue that was limited to that video. A subscription that someone pays for every month isn't limited to one particular broadcast.
Sure, yeah, and here's the truth is there's a lot of we're talking about this in theory,
Yeah.
because
Someone else has to figure this
you
out.
would only a judge would have to figure it out. And
Yeah.
that's sort of the point, right?
Oof.
Because unless this, like, if there's going to be an argument of fair use or anything like that, or having to decide how much money was made from a broadcast and how much is eligible for the content owner to claim, all of that would come down to a legal process. And the truth is, this very rarely does result in lawsuits. Like we're repping Teddy Fresh today, both wearing Teddy Fresh. Ethan and Gila are some of the only people who have actually been through
The
a fair use
pioneers of
lawsuit.
fair use lawsuit.
Honestly, and
Yeah.
their case was hugely precedent setting. They reacted to some content. They reacted to quite a bit of it. I thought they might lose that case just because they reacted to a substantial portion of the other person's content. Talking about the Matt Haas case back in the day.
But that was a traditional YouTube video in the sense that it was edited and transformed because you have the tools to do that when you're editing a video. You don't have the tools to do that
Yes,
when you're
and,
live streaming.
and even though they had a pretty clear case, I would think, of fair use, they still have to spend, I think, hundreds of thousands of dollars going through a legal process to argue it, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, who wants to do that? And who would want to do that again,
And will a big Twitch streamer be made an example of? Is that what some big corporate conglomeration is doing right now? Building a case against whoever they decide is going to go down?
right? Like,
Just to make
maybe
an
it's just
example.
it's a matter of time before that happens, or some media company comes to Twitch and says, hey, you guys shouldn't have safe harbor protection under the DMCA because you are not sort of effectively meeting the requirements of getting rid of repeat offenders. If some of the biggest streamers on the platform are just going to repeatedly violate this and just not care about a sort of slap on the wrist, I got banned for a day, I think it would be very easy for one of these media companies to say Twitch shouldn't have DMCA protection. And then all of a sudden, I think Twitch would look very different after they get threatened with $1 billion lawsuit. Twitch is owned by Amazon. They have a lot of money, right? But does Amazon really care about the health of Twitch long term? I don't know. Does Twitch even make money? YouTube didn't make money for a long time. I'm guessing Twitch might not even be profitable to Amazon. So if some $1 billion lawsuit comes along, is Amazon really going to care about fixing Twitch? That's what makes me so furious about these giant streamers doing this in such an egregious way, because it literally, the future of Twitch as a platform upon which small creators can even have the hope of making money sort of rests on people not being sort of bad actors and abusing the platform. And it's incredibly frustrating to see some of the top streamers just being bad actors. And it's just, honestly, it's fucking lazy too.
You know what doesn't help though is that the company paying them, Twitch, their partner program that they have contracts with, clearly isn't really taking action unless they have to. Twitch, if they already thought that this was not acceptable, we don't want our top streamers doing this, they would have told them and something would have changed. Instead, Twitch waits until they get a DMCA takedown from a company to issue that alone to the creator. They're not proactively saying like, guys, we gotta stop doing this. We know this is wrong. They're letting streamers do this. I'm not saying that
they wouldn't say that they are. They would
sure.
say that they have this DMCA.
I know, but
they're trying to
that's
meet the
just
requirements of the law.
Yeah, sure.
It's ultimately up to these Twitch streamers are businesses. You are publishers.
I'm not saying that should evade responsibility from the creators, but I'm saying Twitch is also knowingly not really doing that much about their top creators doing this.
You got to be really careful about what you're saying here, because they would say they have a system in place to prevent it.
They do, but yes, technically they do in the contract.
Cristine, you can't accuse Twitch of just knowingly allow fraudulent content to go on their platform. Like
so
you just can't say that.
You don't think they monitor at all the top streamers in the past few weeks? They just have no idea what they're doing? I don't believe that.
I think they're aware of it, and they're probably with their legal department thinking, what do we have to do to make sure we are not, as a business, liable for this?
Yeah, and it seems like they've issued a DMCA takedown when it's been requested to them by the company. I haven't seen anything more than that.
Yeah, but that is what they're legally required to do.
I know, but isn't that like not enough? Like that's what I'm trying to say. According like if they want to protect themselves in the platform and they recognize that this is not good for the platform, they should be doing more than just
I just don't want you accusing someone of something that you can't actually. Anyway, we should be careful what we're saying here. But I agree that they should maybe want to be proactively discouraging this from happening.
That's all my point. Okay. That's my point. What did I say that's wrong?
Okay, I thought you said a little bit more than that. And anyway, I feel like you're just trying to shift it to like.
No, I'm not.
The platform. I think the creators have to own this.
Yes.
That's my point. And I find it incredibly frustrating.
Yes, and the creator is ultimately responsible for what they choose to do on stream and share with people. Like, obviously, I'm just, I'm also hearing like their argument. I'm not saying it is correct and evades them from responsibility, but like they signed a contract with Twitch to stream for 16 hours a day. I mean, whatever, that varies. It's a number of hours per month.
16 hours.
That's not exactly what it is, but like that is how you get more successful on Twitch is you stream more and more. That's just what it is.
Yeah, and Twitch a lot of Twitch streamers who have come over to YouTube have specifically pointed to the fact that there is less requirement to stream a certain number of hours as one reason to pick YouTube over Twitch, right? In transparency.
Yes.
So I guess what are you saying though? Because
I'm just saying it's more challenging, and this is not an excuse, but I want to have a balanced discussion here because I'm also aware that there is hundreds of thousands, millions of people, fans who watch their favorite streamer and want to be able to watch their favorite streamer do like a watch along or react. And we can talk about like solutions or what we think of that next, but I just don't want us just to be like, yeah, trash, trash, trash. Like we're trying to have a productive conversation. So I want to analyze like all the players here. Yes, the content creator is responsible, but they're also just like their boss, if you want to call Twitch their boss. Like
Twitch isn't their boss.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, I know, but it's the people who pay them. So fine, it's not their boss, but it's their source of income. And if their source of income isn't really doing much, you see that, although incorrectly, but you may perceive that as like inadvertent permission. That's all I'm saying. If you put yourself in their shoes, that's why they've all just decided like, I guess this is fine. Because no one's doing anything about it. Do you see that's what I'm saying.
I understand that that's the argument some people would make.
It's not an argument. It's explaining their mindset.
Okay, and it's a terrible mindset to have. You are responsible. If you're pirating content, I can't argue that. I could walk into a movie theater right now and record the new Spider-Man movie and try to broadcast it on the internet. What's my argument? People wanted to see it? Like, it's just a bad argument. So I don't think we need to give airtime to just a bad argument. I appreciate what you're saying about like, smart media companies will look at this as like more than just a problem. They could look at it as an opportunity, right? And I think what you're getting at is like people enjoy watching content with their favorite creators.
Yeah.
And I think that's where there is some interesting discussion to have around solutions, maybe. So I know there's already some like integration with like Twitch and Amazon Prime, and how I think if your viewer has an Amazon Prime account, they can log in, and as long as both the viewer and the hoster are authorized to view that content, have paid for that content, then you can all sort of watch that content together. I have to think there's some interesting solutions with that model.
Yeah, and I hope that's where the platform and, content ID holders are headed, because I think that's the only way to meet this new demand of where people on the internet want to be able to watch alongside. They want to watch their favorite streamer watch something and then pause and react and engage with chat. And it would be sad for a lot of audiences if that was just like impossible now, and that the platform was ruined as a result of it and people were sued. And, I don't think that's not what I want. And I am a content creator who cares about my own content ID, but I'm also a consumer of media and new media. And I'm now a streamer. And although I don't do React content on my stream, I see the value of how chatters and people participating in your streaming community, how they just want to hang out with you. And some of that can include watching something that just came out. And I'm not saying, therefore, just do it. But I think that how do businesses come together to figure out a solution that can work? Maybe that Amazon Prime thing, that sounds good in theory. I can see a lot of issues with it. Mostly that it would be difficult to actually, not everyone has access to Amazon Prime. It's very situational, or in a geographic sense. If I have Amazon Prime Canada, it won't let me watch anything on AmazonPrime.com. That's really frustrating for international viewers. Or how do you actually make sure that the sync works? What if you have to go to customer service? If
but these sound like technical
issues.
issues. In principle, does it make sense though? If I want to watch a piece of content with my favorite streamer, is there just a way of validating that me as a viewer, I have the rights to also watch that content? I purchased it, or I have the streaming platform by which I can watch it, and then we could all watch it together. That to me just actually seems super reasonable and doesn't require pirating content or rebroadcasting content you don't have a license for.
So there's something like that now when we try and sign in to our television service provider. So in the past 10 years, TV and television watching has become more obsolete, but maybe you still want to watch Sister Wives, but on your computer, right? So if you go to TLC, you can, or even MTV, I think, there's a lot of TV channel stations that have converted into online viewership where you can watch on demand, but you have to sign in with your TV service provider. So if I sign in with whoever I buy my TV from, if I still buy TV, I know that I get it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but the logic is you sign in with that account, it's linked, and it recognizes that you have a paid monthly subscription, and it gives you access to all the content in those channels online so you can watch on demand. And that is a system I think that maybe you could apply to streaming. So if someone is streaming content that is, a Netflix thing, but there's a widget or something that says the viewer can just sign in with their Netflix, and then they can also watch the streamer who's watching the Netflix, then everyone is paying for it.
I think this is a good solution, assuming that just watch parties or watching someone react to content or having virtual watch parties is what we want. But I do just want to sort of caution that I think we disagree on this point. I actually think it is not good for the creator economy or these creator platforms for the most popular streams and streamers to be people who are just watching original content that they didn't create. I actually think it's the last, it's the gasps of the sort of really creative, it's creatively bankrupt, honestly. Creating original content is really fucking hard, honestly. There's a lot of creators who do a great job of it, and they have trouble, and they have staff, and they have editors, and there's a lot that goes into creating original content. And when you see people making millions of dollars off of taking a nap while they're rebroadcasting Lord of the Rings, I'm sorry, something about that just makes me really angry.
I hear you, because you're bitter that the lazy person is making so much money, and it's not fair.
And it's not just selfishly interested, it's ruining it for the people behind them too. That's what's so gross about it to me.
Yeah, if this comes down to suing or etc. But
Or people who just want to react to content in a reasonable, fair use sort of way are going to have a much harder time because there are people just silently watching the Olympics.
it's not that I disagree with you. I think in a perfect world, yeah, I would love to see the top creators on all platforms be like genuinely creative, making their own art, coming up with their own ideas or takes or like actually transformative commentary, because commentary and critique about whatever it is cool, and we need that too. I'm not saying only just stand there by yourself ever. Like,
But it's a problem when the commentary, there's more commentary than original content, I guess is the picture I'm trying to draw here. Like for people who love movies, if there were 99 critics for every one new movie that came out and 99% of content was just commentary or criticism of the one out of 100 movie, that would be clearly imbalanced, like not a healthy situation, right? And I worry when you see the top 10 Twitch streamers being people just watching content, that's not good for the platform.
yeah, but Ben, why are those people the top 10? Because people like their personalities, and it has nothing to do with their creation of original content. So we can sit here and say like, oh, the most artistic creative people should be at the top, but ultimately those people are just not the most watched people. And I'm not trying to I'm just trying to say like the reality is that like people watch the top streamers because they just like them and want to hang out with them, and there is a huge community around those people. So it doesn't really matter what they're doing, and they will even admit to that. It doesn't matter if I'm watching MasterChef or doing this or playing a game or just like reading chat. They'll still have a decent number of people and they'll still be in the top.
I mean, if that's true, then they should just not be reacting to content they don't have a license for.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that point. I'm just trying to explain, like, I don't think you can just say, oh, let's just make all the most creative content people at the top. You can't force that.
I know.
This is based on viewer demand. It's what the people want. And most viewers
just don't seem
not
faves.
To give a shit about original content. I'm sorry. That's just like the truth. I wish it was different too. I wish that the most creative people painting beautiful portraits or something like was at the top, but it's not.
Yeah.
And that's just, it is what
fair.
it is.
And you can't just wish that to not be
so
the
you
case.
can't just like criticize, like hate people at the top because they're not the most creative. They were literally at the top because people like them. People subscribe to them. People watch them.
I can resent what they're doing.
Sure. But okay, so you can hate them. Are you a hate watcher? Is what you're saying? You're probably one of those viewers then.
A hate watcher? What does that mean?
Like if you hate watch them. Like you hate the fact that they're at the top, but you keep watching them.
I don't watch a lot of Twitch. Sometimes I'll tune in and see some interesting content, but yeah, I'm not going to watch someone watch a TV show. I don't really.
Yeah,
get that.
and I have definitely watched more streaming content in the since the pandemic started. I just started turning on streams in the background, passively watching it. So I think I have a bit better of an appreciation of that mindset, whether like as a creator or as an audience member. I think I do see it differently than how I would have thought about this a year ago. I probably would have had a hard like, nope, fuck them attitude a year ago. But I really see the value in finding a solution where streamers can do what their audience wants with the permission and some kind of sharing in the benefit with the copyright holder. But ultimately, the copyright holder should be able to say no if they want to. But I hope that, like you said, smart copyright holder businesses see the value in sharing it. Because like I see that, when people have recreated my tutorial or, they're reacting to, I mean, no one really reacts to Simply Nailogical videos. It doesn't make sense. But if someone was doing that, I would not mind. But that's me personally.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Like this kind of reminds me, like we grew up with Napster. Do you remember like for a few years, it was just totally normal to be like, hey, all of a sudden there's a way of me just downloading music for free.
Yeah.
And people didn't really think twice about it. And I don't want to be a total hypocrite, like most people participated in that
torrents.
of our generation. That kind of came later. But I guess what we saw there was that happened. Napster subsequently gets shut down because of the DMCA, I'm pretty sure. And I think smart companies realized people didn't want to walk into a record store anymore to buy a CD. People wanted the convenience of being able to easily download and stream music. And some of the big successful companies now were sort of born out of, Napster's demise, I
Like
think.
Spotify, Apple Music,
All those
YouTube
streaming services,
Music.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder now if we're seeing like a weird sort of trend that there's too much fragmentation in those things. There's too many of them. It's getting too expensive when you start combining them, that people are sort of reverting to being okay with just streaming things illegally again. And I
Yeah.
really think, it's not to excuse that, but I think smart companies, like you say, should recognize where audiences are and what they want. And if it's to somehow facilitate that I can watch some anime series with Pokimane, you know, some publishing company should figure out how to do that effectively, and I think it would be in their interest,
Yeah.
their business
I,
interest.
I think so. It will take several years to figure that out, as we've seen with YouTube. It's still not perfect, and that came like five years ago or something. But I think that is the smart future. It's what I hope for, because I'd rather something like that than Twitch just being shut down because they're just like, fuck this, we're being sued.
And honestly, I know I'm kind of emotional, but like what makes me so angry about this is it's the creators at the top who have already made millions of dollars are really risking the future of the platform just so that they can so egregiously violate copyright laws. That is what's bothering me so much.
I understand, yeah. And I see that too. And I think a lot of fans will defend their streamer, well, just because they love them. That's how fandoms work. But I think the argument that fans use is like, the streamer says, okay, well, everything we do is DMCA-able. So technically I open YouTube and just like show you thumbnails. That's technically copyright. So it's stupid. Therefore, let's not listen to this dumb rule. And they use that, I think, to get their fans to be like, yeah, DMCA is dumb. It's outdated. It's fucked. It doesn't make sense. And then their audience doesn't really like have an appreciation of fair use law and like what actually means transformative. While it is maybe technically a violation to open YouTube and show logos, like YouTube is
Yeah.
not gonna strike you for like opening the homepage of YouTube. That's stupid. It's kind of like a speeding ticket, or speeding. You go 2 kilometers or miles, wherever you live, over the speeding limit. A cop
You're
is not gonna
technically speeding.
You're
Yeah.
technically breaking the law.
Yeah.
But like no one's gonna pull you over or give you a ticket for doing that. However, if you go 50 kilometers over the speed limit, you're probably getting a huge ass ticket. And right now, it's like the biggest content creators on Twitch are speeding 50 kilometers over the
They're
speeding
not
limit.
just speeding. They're 100 over the speeding.
100.
They're
50 is a lot, though.
They're in a school zone and they don't even have a driver's license. And I guess that's my point. That's how we should look at those
But they're using
people.
the excuse, not all of them, but one of the excuses they use is like, well, everyone speeds. Which like might be true, but like most people are speeding 5
But
kilometers
not everyone
over.
is running over children
Yeah.
in the school zone.
So I think that's a good analogy. It's not a good argument that I've seen some streamers use to try and say, well, like everyone speeds, everyone does DMCA. Like, well, no, like the copyright holder, you have to ask the test of reasonability here. And I hate that it's like people do not look at things from a reasonable interpretation. And maybe this is just my logic brain, my own issue.
logic brain.
But like obviously YouTube or people don't mean that they're gonna strike you if you open the YouTube homepage on your stream just to like scroll, or you're scrolling Google and there's like an ad for something. No one's striking you for that. No one's pulling you over for going 2 kilometers over the speed limit. So you have to think of it reasonably. And unfortunately, yes, streaming entire shows, even if you're pausing and giving some commentary, but you are violating the majority of the fair use principles by doing it. So if it's not fair use, then it is an infringement and you're doing it knowingly. And I think most streamers know that. They're just waiting for a consequence. And I think most of them think that there just like won't be meaningful consequence, which unfortunately, I guess if you put it that way, because we're trying to avoid, everything burning down, that's how I think some of them are treating it. Like Pokimane was banned or, suspended for 2 days.
It's like a nothing punishment.
Yeah, and I think she's a really smart person. I've heard her speak about business, and I'm sure she's going to be very careful and articulate when she comes back.
We're recording this while she
She is
is
banned,
during her
yeah.
suspension. Yeah.
So she'll be, I think on like Monday, which will be yesterday, she will have explained her viewpoint. So we don't know it yet at the time of recording. I will definitely be listening to what she thinks now. Maybe her views will have changed. But previously, her and other streamer views was like, I'll do what I want until I get in trouble, basically.
Yeah, and I really think that is a dangerous mindset to have, and it's easy to have as someone who's already made your money on this platform.
And it doesn't help. Like, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes too, because I don't want to just be like, fuck them. It doesn't help when you have an audience of like hundreds of thousands saying, it's not fair. We love you. We just want to watch you. We don't care what you watch. You should be allowed. This law is old. Like,
Could lose
your
perspective on
fans
what's
love
reasonable.
you, and like, you know, for good reason they do. But sometimes, and I know this, it is hard to separate, you know, advice from your fans when there is something else that is beyond what they can see, because it's not the risk they're taking. You know, it's a business thing that they may not be able to fully see. So it is much harder when you're a creator that has a fan base that's encouraging you.
Yeah, I agree with you. And at the end of the day, I want what is best for these platforms to be successful into the future, so other people can follow in your footsteps or the footsteps of the other successful people now, and actually, you know, be successful. Like,
Yeah, have a career in being a content creator. Yeah.
it will be a good thing to, like, I think YouTube is ahead of the game out of necessity in terms of the sort of content ID revenue sharings. And again, those things aren't perfect, but at least that is, I think, the direction that is just a necessity given the sort of legal landscape, that any big video hosting platform will just need to have some of these tools in place. It will be a good thing. I think it is inevitable that Twitch will need to develop these tools too, frankly, and probably sooner than later if big streamers are just going to be watching TV shows on their streams. But I think that will actually be good in the long run. I would like to see another prominent platform roll out tools so it can actually start a better conversation about what tools are better, what are more effective ways of doing this, are there more creative or innovative ways of doing revenue sharing or watch parties. Like, that is the direction we're headed in anyway, probably. And I'd much rather see a future where big Twitch streamers are sort of respecting that or embracing those tools than one in which, you know, we're seeing billion-dollar lawsuits.
I think that they might embrace the tools when they're available, but it's just like right now there's literally nothing. So they're like, well, what do you want me to do? So that, yes, I hope that ultimately from this comes something good, and maybe large media companies decide, you know, there is so much value in digital media, which includes content creators who are streamers, YouTubers, whatever. That's just like where people are, what people watch these days. And especially younger people, right? And that's just going to increase as we all age. More and more younger people will be finding entertainment in this way. So I hope that media companies can like arrange some kind of consultation with the platforms like Twitch, YouTube, with content creators, and involve everyone who are the key players in this conversation to arrive at a system that is as fair as possible, that allows people to still watch some content within reason, that, you know, might have to be on a approved list, or I don't know, ultimately it's up to the copyright holder. But I hope that there's like a way that we can meet in the middle. That is my hope and my position, because I see that it's like, I see both sides. I don't want anyone to misinterpret like me like being on the other side. I'm merely offering an argument to Ben's very strong position based on what I've observed streamers say. It doesn't mean I'm like, that's what I believe. But I see the validity in their position in terms of why they have that argument and why they feel that way. So I want to consider everyone, including the viewers, which is like often missing from this kind of conversation. So many fucking viewers want to watch React content. They just do. So let's try and find a solution for the masses.
We could meet in the middle. That's a good name for a sandwich shop.
Meet in the middle.
2 pieces of bread, meet in the middle.
Check that for trademark. Copyright infringement?
All right, I'm all fired up. You
Why are
wanna
we
go,
so
wanna go
mad?
for a run?
Nothing even happened to me. Like,
Maybe I'm just in a terrible mood today.
yeah.
It's okay.
You want to watch some MasterChef?
Yeah. Let's go subscribe to Gordon Ramsay's YouTube channel.
I'm gonna watch some Master Mensch.
Master Menchie.
She's sleeping.
Mayor
Master
Menchie.
Menchie.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, and we really appreciate. I think the SimplyPodLogical audience is incredibly thoughtful with their input, and I think that you guys have some really good takes. So I'm very interested. Air your thoughts in the comment section down below. I often read them, and I always want to know, like, the viewer perspective too. Like, that is the majority of people here. Well, you have businesses arguing over, but we want the money. I think for viewers, like, that's kind of annoying thing. Like, fair point. If you're an artist, you understand that. But the viewers are often
How do
ignored.
viewers want to consume this content? Yeah. And that's in the business interests of people to consider that.
Media,
for foremost,
digital media, and social media is for the users. Like, that, it is by definition an entertainment platform for the people consuming it.
Should ban them all. You can only see movies in movie theaters from now on.
Not in COVID. So now you can just see
really.
nothing. Imagine there's like a ban on
We didn't
media
even touch
everywhere.
on that. Yeah, you're right. The COVID, like, watch parties
Have increased.
more than ever. You would think companies would be embracing the idea of how to make watch parties a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're waiting. I mean, maybe it's coming.
waiting.
We just haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's coming.
All right.
All right. Well, we hope you have a very happy Taco Tuesday.
Yes.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll
See
see y'all
y'all
later.
later.
Bye.